So first we will do the qualitative analysis of carbon. First, detection of carbon. Detection of carbon. Now for detection of carbon, the other day what we have learned that we took organic compound which is unknown, that if you heat with CuO and heat it, we would get carbon dioxide gas, H2O, and Cu will get settled down. This is what we have seen earlier in Lebig's process also. Now, the carbon dioxide which is released in here, that can be passed through lime water to understand if there is any precipitate formation or not. So this confirms the presence of carbon dioxide or presence of carbon. That presence of carbon dioxide can be confirmed by lime water test. Lime water test. So what we do here, we'll take calcium hydroxide. We take calcium hydroxide, which is lime water, and add it to carbon dioxide, or rather whatever the carbon dioxide gas that is coming, we'll pump that into calcium hydroxide. And we see a white precipitate of calcium carbonate forming. All right. On adding excess amount of carbon dioxide, we will get calcium bicarbonate. Okay, and this would be a clear solution. So this confirms the presence of carbon or carbon dioxide in that organic compound. Okay, so this is very important to understand how it has been done. Whatever the water that is coming, right? If you take this steam, or you can cool down and collect that water also, we will let that pass through copper sulfate. So copper sulfate anhydrous is white color crystal. These are white color crystals. When they get exposed to atmosphere, and if we have moisture in the atmosphere, or if we pass the steam into copper sulfate or add it to water, in all of those cases, it will form a complex CuSO4.5H2O, which would appear blue color. So this confirms both the presence of hydrogen and carbon in the organic compound. If there is a sulfur, and let's say sulfur dioxide is coming, sulfur dioxide will also give the same reaction. First, it will form calcium sulfate, and with excess of sulfur dioxide, it will also become clear solution. So how do we differentiate sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide? Usually carbon dioxide will not have any smell. SO2 will have a foul smell, pungent smell. That is a simple lab confirmation that, okay, the gas which has come possibly is SO2 and not CO2. So if it is an organic compound, and if it has carbon and hydrogen, these are the confirmatory tests we can do by which you can detect the presence of carbon and hydrogen. Okay. Now, next important deal is about detection of nitrogen, sulfur, halogens, and phosphorus. Most of the organic compounds have only these four categories, which is nitrogen containing compounds, sulfur containing compounds, halide containing compounds, and phosphorus containing compounds. So in this, to understand whether there is a presence of nitrogen, sulfur, halide, or phosphorus or not, we make a very interesting test known as Lassane's test. Lassane's test. Okay, Lassane's test is also known as sodium extract test. Sodium extract test. This you can find n number of videos on YouTube also about how to make the sodium extract test. So Lassane's test is also known as the sodium extract test. So in order to convert the organic compound, right, into the ionic form, we need to prepare this sodium extract. So the idea here is to convert organic compound, because in organic compound all the atoms which we want to detect, they may be covalently bonded, and we want them to convert into ionic forms. So to convert that into ionic form, right, we make something called sodium extract. So how is this? Suppose, imagine like this, there is some carbon. We have carbon in that organic compound which is connected with sulfur. There may be carbon which may be connected with nitrogen somewhere. Got it? And there may be carbon which is connected to oxygen. There may be carbon which is connected to halide, like this. This is how we may have an organic compound. On this, if at all there is a presence of sulfur, we want that to convert into Na2S. After doing some reaction, after performing something to this organic compound, we should get an ionic compound Na2S. If at all there is a presence of sulfur. If we have halides, we should get NaX. If we have oxide, we should get Na2O. If we have nitride, we should get NaN3. This is sodium azide. Got it? So this is what we are expecting, like, to get all the sulfur, halogen and these elements into this particular ionic form. So how do we prepare this sodium extract? Let us see that, which is preparation of sodium extract. So to prepare sodium extract, what we do, first we take a small amount of organic compound. So small amount of organic compound and mix with sodium metal, Na metal, which means we take sodium metal, add to the test tube of organic compound which is present. Okay, and this is to be done in fusion tube. Fusion tube is a glass tube. Got it? Which will sustain quite a amount of heat. Okay, it won't break easily. Got it? And it is heated and is heated till it becomes red hot. So we keep heating so strongly that the entire organic compound along with sodium metal in the fusion tube, everything should become red hot. Got it? So till this point that glass won't break. Got it? So that is what is called as fusion tube. Now add this, we take this red hot, right? So red hot tube, got it, into distilled water. Then the minute we take the distilled water, imagine a very red hot glass, suddenly you put it to water which is at a much lower temperature. What would happen? The glass will start cracking. So in fact, the glass will start crushing here into the water. So crush into water. So the minute you add it to that, the fusion rod will start getting crushed. And after crushing, we will keep mixing that and we'll try to filtrate. Okay, the filtrate is taken out. And usually the filtrate would be clear solution. And this clear solution which we extract is what we call it as sodium extract, or in laboratory terms it is known as SE. Okay, so sodium extract. One very important thing that you need to check out during this extraction, that sodium extract must be clear solution. If it is not clear solution, if it is some colored solution, which means the reaction has been incomplete. Got it? So there must be some incomplete decomposition of If not, the sodium extract obtained may be with incomplete decomposition of organic compound. So you got to make sure that the sodium extract which you are using must get completely clear solution. So this is, so far I hope you understood what we have done. So once you get the sodium extract, right, this sodium extract is generally basic in nature, because we are using sulfur, oxygen, halides. Got it? All of them are conjugate bases, right? S2 minus conjugate base, X minus conjugate base, O minus conjugate base, N3 minus conjugate base. These are all the conjugate bases of the respective acids. H2S, hydrogen sulfur sulfide acid here, hydrogen hydrohalic acid here. Got it? O minus, well, O minus isn't the case here, which is, I'll write it as O2 minus. O2 minus, you know that O2 minus is a basic oxide. N3 minus azide also coming from hydrozoic acid. So these are all the basic oxides or halides which are formed with the sodium. All right. So definitely the sodium extract nature would be basic. So this is the third point. And fourth point which you need to know is, now we want to neutralize this sodium extract. Okay. So to neutralize this sodium extract, okay, what we do, we take some amount of NaOH, small amount, got it, with large amount of H2SO4, got it, is added. Okay, we cannot use HCl because if at all we are detecting halide itself, that will also become a part of that halide will also become a part. So that will mislead us. So we need to take H2SO4 only. So in short, if you observe what we have done so far, we have taken organic compound, added with sodium, heated strongly to get sodium salt. We got a sodium salt. Okay. Now, if there was a carbon, if it is an organic compound which contains nitrogen along with sodium, it may give NaCN. This is what you can expect. Similarly, if there is an halide, right, and sodium which is present, it would usually give us NaX as the salt. If it is sulfur and sodium, we may get Na2S. Okay. If nitrogen is more, we may get NaN3. But azide formation is very less. Okay. This is very less formation. Got it? Most of this compound would be forming, right? This one, what is it? Cyanides or nitriles. Right? Other than this, if at all we had sulfur also present along with nitrogen in the sodium extract, we might get NaCN plus Na2S also. Got it? And some amount of NaCNS. But the important part is NaCNS on heating will always give NaCN and Na2S. So the final products which you will have is NaCN and Na2S. Okay. So let me remind you all the salts once again. If there is a presence of only nitrogen, the major ionic form which you will get is NaCN. If there is a presence of halide, the major ionic form which you will get is NaX. If there is sulfur, Na2S. Okay, phosphorus hydride. If there is a phosphorus form, correct, so we will get this as Na3P. Okay, sodium phosphide. If there is very large extent of nitrogen, we may get traces of NaN3 also, azide also. Got it? So this is what we will get. Now our idea is to detect whether there is any presence of nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, halides, and so on. So let us see the first test. This would be for test for nitrogen. So I want to detect the presence of nitrogen. So what will I do? Okay. To the prepared sodium extract, I will add freshly made, okay, freshly prepared FeSO4 plus NaOH. FeSO4 plus NaOH. Now let's see what might be happening here. NaOH plus the sodium extract. If there is nitrogen present, what do we expect? It must be in the presence of NaCN now. So this sodium extract which has been formed, that plus FeSO4 solution, on adding this, it will become a complex Na4 FeCN6. We'll get this complex formation, right? So we will wait for some time. Got it? So first to the prepared, like this, suppose if this is a tube in which I have a prepared Se. Onto this Se, I'm adding FeSO4 with some dilute NaOH. So we will prepare this, we'll shake this test tube and keep it aside for some time. After some time, what we will do, we will add FeCl3 to this. Okay. Observe the oxidation state. Earlier, when you are adding FeSO4, it was +2 oxidation state. Now it is +3 oxidation state. So on adding FeCl3, we will get a colored solution, which is Fe4 FeCN6 whole thrice. Got it? This will form like a precipitate, which is Prussian blue. The color of this is Prussian blue. Got it? So this immediately confirms the presence of nitrogen. Got it? So if at all there is any nitrogen present, then this is the reaction that must be happening. Okay. The other way of looking at the same reaction, got it? So is this way, this is the second way of looking at it. Imagine as if when I added FeSO4 plus NaOH, got it, there might be FeOH twice forming, which will be slightly green precipitate. FeOH twice is a green precipitate. And this FeOH twice, got it, which is formed, I'm adding it to sodium extract NaCN. Then it will become a colorless complex FeCN6, this one. And then on adding with FeCl3, we are getting this Prussian blue precipitate, Fe4 FeCN6 thrice. This is Prussian blue. So I guess you understood what we are doing now. So this is the confirmation for nitrogen. Okay, so this is the test for nitrogen's presence. Check out the next important point in this. Okay, so sometimes just to make sure that if at all, imagine this, if FeOH twice is formed to a large extent, if this is forming to a large extent, what would happen? Then this blue color and green color may mix because both of them are precipitates, correct? So we want to avoid this to make a large amount in the solution. Okay, so to ensure that there is very less amount of FeOH twice or no traces of FeOH twice, we will add small amount of H2SO4. Small amount of H2SO4 may be added to above solution. It will mix with or I'll say mask with Prussian blue color. One important note that you need to check out, if there is no carbon presence, then there is no reaction for this. I mean, this is not the reaction you can expect. So compounds which does not have carbon, with nitrogen, carbon with the given nitrogen will not give this test. So I hope you guys understood that. Okay. Few of the compounds, suppose, which do not give this Lessons test, got it? Especially because we need a carbon triple bond N forming during that sodium extract formation. So some compounds which does not give, okay, this is note A and note B, some compounds which does not give sodium extract test are diazonium salts, got it, and azo compounds. Diazonium salts and azo compounds. Yesterday also we have learned about diazonium salts. Diazonium salts will have N triple bond N plus, and if you have any Cl minus like this, okay, this is diazonium chloride salt. So when you have N triple bond N, right, in a molecule, on heating, the first thing it will do is it will become N2 gas and escape out. So it will hardly be staying there, got it, as C triple bond N in the solution. Same is the case happens with azo compounds also. Azo compounds as in we have R, N, double bond N and R. This will also immediately break and form into N2 molecule and escape out. So they will release out N2 gas. So they liberate N2 gas and they do not give sodium extract. They liberate N2 gas on heating. So the entire nitrogen is lost there. So we cannot detect the presence of nitrogen. Okay, I guess this is clear, everyone. So this is about sodium extract. Second, we'll see detection of sulfur. So what we saw earlier was the detection of nitrogen. Now we'll see detection of sulfur. The preparation of sodium extract is the same. Till this point, everything is same. From here, we will see the test. So first was the test for nitrogen. Now this time, this is the test for sulfur. Right. So if you check out point by point, we know that sulfur which is present, in organic compound is converted to Na2S. It's usually converted to Na2S. Now, which can be confirmed, right? So which can be confirmed by any of the following tests. Confirming sulfides is pretty easy actually. So what we do, out of which we can see that we can make a precipitate test. Okay. If you observe certain metal ions, especially copper 2+, which is forming CuS, silver forming Ag2S, Pb forming PbS, Hg forming HgS, nickel forming NiS, cobalt forming CoS, iron forming FeS, bismuth forming Bi2S3. Now, you could see all of these sulfides amazingly are black in color. So if you take any of their respective salts, for example, if I take some Cu2+ salt like copper sulfate and add it to the sodium extract, what you have just obtained, immediately it will become a black precipitate of CuS. So that itself will confirm the presence of sulfur. Got it? So we can use all of this black precipitate. So I can take copper sulfate, I can take some silver nitrate salt, I can take lead nitrate or lead sulfate, I can take HgO or Hg2+ salts, anything, and I add that to this sodium extract, I should be able to get black precipitate, which instantly confirms the presence of sulfur. Okay. So the other way is I can get white precipitate also. Got it? White precipitate is only one which will form, that is zinc. Okay, this will also help you understand the entire inorganic reactions. In salt analysis, we'll do this. There you anyway have to memorize which of them are black, which of them are white. So from here only you start writing the list. Got it? These are all the black sulfides. There is only one white sulfide, which is zinc. Okay. On the other hand, if you confirm this presence of sulfide with manganese, it will form MnS. MnF is pink color, also known as buff color, or small piggy color. Got it? So pink color of MnS will also confirm the presence of sulfide. Okay. And usually in labs, we take lead acetate CH3CO twice. Lead acetate is a colorless liquid. We add it to sodium extract to get PBS, a black precipitate. Okay. A black PPT, which is formed. So this confirms the presence of sulfide. Okay. Now this is one lab test which we can do, which is a precipitate test. Got it? The other one is a complex formation test, also known as the sodium nitroprusside test. Sodium nitroprusside test. Okay. So we take the sodium extract, add it with Na2FeCN5, NO. Okay. NO is also a ligand. Please don't worry, don't panic that what are these complexes. You have a complete chapter of complexes where you will learn everything related to complexes. Okay, so don't worry about it right away. So as of now, just take the information that there is a complex which is known as sodium nitroprusside. That is normally a red-orange in color solution. This is red-orange solution. As soon as you add that to sodium extract, it would become purple. Become Na4 FeCN5, and this molecule become NOS. Correct? This would turn out to be purple color. Purple, or we can use it as violet as well. Okay. So this is the color you can expect it to form. I hope this point is clear, everyone. Suppose this is about the second confirmation, which is for sulfur, detection of sulfur. Suppose if we have nitrogen sulfur both together, which is detection of nitrogen and sulfur both present together. If they are both present together, how do we detect it? Imagine if we have carbon, nitrogen, sulfur present together in organic compound. The sodium extract will contain NaCNS. This is what you will have. Okay, so this NaCNS, okay, which is the sodium extract, if you treat with FeCl3, it would form FeSCN thrice. Got it? Books would give you this way also, FeSCN plus 2, which meant the same thing. Got it? Because SCN would have minus charge, so X minus 1 is equal to plus 2, which confirms iron has plus 2 oxidation state. Even if it is given this way, FeSCN twice with plus 1. This form, all of them are same. Got it? Eventually only this is formed. But the minute the complex starts forming from here, here or here, they all appear red in color, blood red in color. It's a very, very, very important confirmation for many of the reactions. This also confirms, in inorganic, this also confirms the presence of Fe plus 3. If there is an Fe plus 3, just to confirm that, we react then with, sodium thiocyanate, SCN, and that will form a red blood coloration. So this is deep red blood coloration. This is one of the very frequently asked JEE question. So I would request all of you to learn this carefully. And One important thing, when I use the word coloration, it is not a precipitate, it is just a liquid. Now, we can do this test if there is a presence of nitrogen and sulfur both, or suppose if you had NaCN, note, okay, if NaCN is present or NaCNS is present in the sodium extract, on adding excess amount of sodium to this, got it? So what will it do? It will react with this CNS which has formed with sodium, and it would become NaCN and Na2S separated out. Now I can use above two tests, right? So I can use this sodium test for nitrogen, right? So which is a Prussian blue color formation, or I can use this violet coloration. So I will do both these tests and confirm that yes, this solution has the presence of cyanide also, it has presence of sulfide also, which means this organic compound has both nitrogen as well as sulfur. Okay. So this is the detection of nitrogen and sulfur together. I guess all of you understood that. Any doubts so far? Right. Next, check out detection of halides. In case if we have halides, how do we detect that? Detection of halide is pretty simple. In sodium extract, we know that we will have NaX salt. That when you treat with AgNO3, we will get various precipitates. Okay. Now I'll just showcase those precipitates here. First one, in case if that sodium extract had chlorine, it would give AgCl precipitate, and AgCl precipitate is white in color. And in case if we have bromine, it will give AgBr precipitate, which is pale yellow color precipitate. And in case if we have NaI, it will become AgI precipitate, which is dark yellow color. Now to confirm this, what we'll do first, once the precipitate comes, I will add ammonium hydroxide. On adding ammonium hydroxide, liquid ammonia, I will get a complete dissolved form of a complex. So which means AgCl will get dissolved in ammonia and forms this complex. Okay, and this complex is soluble. So this we will get a soluble form. Okay, guys. Similarly, if at all I react with NH4OH here, this will also form a soluble complex, sparingly soluble, not completely soluble like AgCl, it is sparingly soluble. But if you take it out with NH4OH, there is no complex formation here, because sometimes the problem is it becomes difficult to distinguish between pale yellow and dark yellow. So just to reassure that it is iodide, you react with ammonium hydroxide. If this dark yellow precipitate is not at all changing, which means there is no reaction happening, it definitely has to be a presence of iodide. But if there is some amount of pale yellow which has formed, is slowly getting dissolved, which means it must be bromide. For white precipitate, which is pretty much clear that it has to be AgCl. Okay. Right. Another thing you got to learn is, just take it as a note, because it will help you in inorganic from now itself. All these salts which we have discussed, all these salts, which is AgCl, AgBr or AgNi, okay, which I'll write it as AgX, are soluble in excess of NaCN. So if I take excess of NaCN, everything will get dissolved into formation of a complex. And the complex which is formed is AgCN twice minus. All right. So this confirms that there is a presence of halogens, and all halogens will be easily dissolvable in excess of NaCN. Got it. The other confirmation which we can make, Just like how I have added with silver salt, I can do the same thing with lead also. So sodium extract, which may contain any halide form, if I treat that with lead acetate, CH3COO twice. This lead with lead acetate also, you will see the same reaction, some precipitates forming here. So if I react if the sodium extract has chloride, it would become PbCl2 precipitate, got it, which is white in color. Similarly, if we take NaBr precipitate, it will become PbBr2, which is also white in color. If we take NaI, it would become PbI2, which is yellow color. Got it? Well, for chlorides, even one test is sufficient. For bromides, you can always recheck with this. Once you react with sodium silver nitrate, once you react with lead acetate, if you are getting white precipitate here, which definitely confirms it must be bromide. Got it? If you have to confirm it for iodide, you check out from here, you should get yellow. With lead also, you should get yellow. So that is a confirmation. Now, note that one important thing which you need to note during this sodium extract, if organic compound has nitrogen, sulfur, okay, also along with some halogens, okay, then before proceeding to above reactions, what we'll do, we will boil sodium extract with concentrated HNO3. Got it? So suppose you're trying to detect it for halogens, but let's say there are some impurities, which means there is a small presence of nitrogen, there is a small presence of sulfide, but this might give some other reactions. So instead, if I want to only focus on detecting halogens, I do not want any traces of nitrogen or sulfur in the solution. So to be double safe, what we will do, we will boil the sodium extract first with concentrated HNO3. What would happen in this? See, the sodium extract which is formed if there is a presence of nitrogen is NaCN. NaCN in the presence of concentrated HNO3 will become HCN vapors. So they are volatile. HCl will become very volatile in concentrated HNO3 and it will come out as vapors. Same thing, if there is an Na2S on treatment with HNO3, it would come out as H2S gas. Got it? So we will remove these volatile acids, which will reduce their presence of nitrogen and sulfur. Okay. Why it is important? Because if you check out Cn minus and S2 minus, both will form, they will also form precipitates with Ag plus or Pb plus 2. Correct? We will get AgCN precipitate, Ag2S precipitate, PbCN twice precipitate, PbS precipitate. So which will mislead us, right? Which will show that there is some new precipitate coming with silver and lead. Correct? So we want to avoid that. So to make sure we are only using this test for halogens, the first thing we will do is boil our sodium extract with concentrated HNO3. Okay. If you have observed that I have not taken fluorine at all, okay, because it becomes difficult to identify fluorine, because fluorine always gives a colorless and soluble salts. So let me put it as a note. Okay. We won't be able to detect, we won't be able to identify fluorine F minus in organic compound because PbF2 and AgF both are soluble and colorless solutions. So it becomes difficult to identify fluorine this way. So if you really want to identify fluorine, there are other methods to do this, which we will not go into that right now. Okay. Now this is a lab test which is done through test tubes. Got it? We can do flame test also. Flame test as in we can heat and observe if there is any presence of halides. Okay. So this test is known as Beilstein's test. Beilstein's test. So Beilstein's test is about heating the halogens here. So if you have chlorine, bromine or iodine presence, so the first thing what we do, we heat the copper wire. So we'll take the copper wire and heat it, having loop in the oxidizing part of the flame. Oxidizing part of the flame. What does this mean? Suppose if we say this is the flame that is coming, let's say this is the flame. So in the flame, we'll always have two parts. Got it? So if you observe this part here, this middle part would usually be slightly red in color. Got it? And the outward part, which you will see, will mostly be blue in color here. Got it? And this one is what we call it as the oxidizing part. Oxidizing part of the flame. So we will try to bring a copper wire which will have a loop like structure like this, a loop like structure. No, this we will try to bring in the oxidizing part of it. Then once you get this, so first we will bring that copper to that oxidizing flame, heat it there, and we will cool the copper wire. We cool the copper wire. Okay. Then dip it in the organic compound and heat again. And heat again. Okay. So if you are getting bluish green or blue color flame in the oxidizing part, this confirms the presence of halogens in organic compound. Correct. So let me show you that copper solid, which is in a loop form. Once it has become cold, you add it to organic compound which contains halides. This would give us CuX2, which is volatile and gives color in flame. Okay, this will give color in flame. What are the halides that could be formed? CuBr2, CuCl2, CuI2. Okay, so any of this halide which is present, this on heating will give copper and X2 with color. Okay, on strong heating, this is what will happen. Correct. Now, here the case is like if you take CuF2 is completely non-volatile. Okay, so CuF2 is non-volatile. So since it is non-volatile, we will not see any appropriate color. Not any appropriate color. Not any appropriate color is formed. So Beilstein's test, what we do, first we take copper wire, heat it on the oxidizing part, got it? Just to make it strong. Okay. Then we'll cool that out. Then we dip it in organic compound and heat again. Right. So on heating, first it will form a volatile halides, And those volatile halides on strong heating will start giving colors because halogen will come out of it. Copper will strongly get associated with that wire again. This is called Beilstein's test. Beilstein's test was asked recently in mains exam. So please remember, there he said only it would be asked like this: which of the following test will confirm the presence of halogens? That's all. Like that, you must be aware that Beilstein test can be used here. Okay, got it. Now, does the Beilstein test is an ultimate test, or should we always use it in the lab? Not so much, because it is not very good for halogens. As, let me tell you as a note, Beilstein test also give colored flames with other compounds like quinone, give with quinone, pyridine, which has nitrogen in it. Okay, all of these will have nitrogen. Urea contains nitrogen. Thiourea contains both nitrogen and sulfur. Got copper cyanide, so which means this is also containing nitrate. Got it? Pyrimidine. AgI will always have this Ag plus and I minus aqueous form. Got it? What do you call this equilibrium? KSP, right? Because it is a sparingly soluble salt, it will dissociate to a very small extent, and the equilibrium constant associated with it is KSP. At the same time, if you have Ag NH3 twice plus, this will be in equilibrium with Ag plus 2 moles of NH3. This we will call it as K dash, or K dash can also be written as 1 by K complex. Got it? K complex is normally written as beta, which means formation of a complex. Ag plus 2 NH3 forming this is normally written as K beta. You will compare this KSP and K dash value. Suppose if the KSP value is very low, if the KSP value is very less compared to that of K dash. Got it? Let's say if you are comparing these two constants and KSP value is very, very low, then this I minus trying to react with this AgI trying to react with ammonia to form this complex would be very less. Got it? So it only comes with an experimental values of these beta. On the other hand, if you see AgCl, which is in equilibrium with Ag plus aqueous plus Cl minus aqueous. Now here there is KSP. Now if you compare this KSP with respect to this K dash, got it? So in that case, you might see that this KSP value is, much greater as compared to that of K dash, which means this get easily dissolved as compared to that of formation of this. So which means this Ag plus will definitely react with NH3 and try to form this as a complex. So if I take organic compound plus oxidizing agent, if I take organic compound plus oxidizing agent, the oxidizing agent which I can take is HNO3, concentrated HNO3, or any peroxide or ozone or KMNO4. So any of this is fine. If I take this, in case if there is any presence of phosphorus here, right, it would convert into PO4 3 minus. Okay. So you can see that I'm not using the sodium extract here. I can directly use organic compound, treat with any oxidizing agent, And if there is a phosphorus, it will convert into PO4 3 minus. Once you get PO4 3 minus, react that with, NH4 twice, MOO4, molybdenum tetraoxide, ammonium molybdenum tetraoxide. With ammonium molybdenum tetraoxide, we will get this as NH4 twice, right? Sorry, NH4 thrice, PO4 dot 12 MOO4. This is a complex that has been formed. It is known as ammonium phosphate, molybdate. Got it? So this is the molybdate formation, and this actually will have canary yellow color. Canary yellow color as in, imagine like, cemented color of yellow. Got it? So very pale yellow color we should get. Okay, I think I have it. Yeah. This one is canary yellow color. All right. So this gives the presence of phosphorus. I hope all of you understood this. Anybody has a doubt here? Please let me know. Right. The other test for halogens, especially for halogens, that is being used is called the layer test. Suppose if I take the Lassen's extract or sodium extract, I can use the word Lassen's extract also. This, if at all I treat with CHCl3 chloroform or CCl4 tetrachlorocarbon or CS2, right? CCl4, CS2 are completely non-polar solvent. CHCl3 is slightly polar solvent. This, along with adding chlorine water, and we shake it. Okay, and we shake that test tube. In case if there is any colored organic layer forming in the test tube, got it? That will confirm the presence of halogens. In fact, if it is bromine present in it, we will get orange or reddish brown color. If it is iodine present, it would be violet color. Got it? What would happen here is when you are adding chlorine water, right? Any part of bromide which is present, Br if at all it is present, if you treat with chlorine, bromine will get oxidized, chlorine will get reduced. And this bromine in the organic layer, okay, so if you check it in the test tube, right, if at all there is Br2 present here in this organic layer, bromine will appear reddish color. So that confirms the presence of bromine. Okay. Similarly, in case if we have I minus, then that will also react with Cl2, forms I2 plus Cl2. Sorry, I2 plus Cl minus. And I2 which has formed will appear to be violet color in that. Okay. I hope you understood. See, bromine is non-polar, right? That is why it is getting dissolved in this non-polar form. So if you take water, when I took chlorine water, there would be two layers here. Okay. So one layer would be above, which will only have water in it. Right. So you will see bromine won't get dissolved here because bromine is non-polar. It will only get dissolved in non-polar solvent. So water will come up here. Rest of the bromine will get settled down in the organic layer. So that gives a confirmation of presence of bromine. The same can be done for iodine as well.
The limitations for using it for the fluorine, sir?
Fluorine. First of all, fluorine is not going to get oxidized because that is the most electronegative element. So obviously we cannot use this in layer test. Second of all, any form of fluoride with the metals, if you take CuF2, AgF, PbF2, got it? HgF, HgF2, all of them are soluble and colorless. Are you getting it? Okay, so that's why it won't happen. Now you might be wondering, sir, how are we deciding which one will come colored and which one will not come colored? Okay, so if that is something which is bothering in your mind, just check out how the color formation is. Color formation in salts. The best example I will take out is AgF, AgCl, AgBr, and AgI. I'll ask you a few questions. First, tell me, out of these four, which is more covalent? Sure, you have heard of that, correct? So we know that this has more covalent character, this has more ionic character. Okay. If it is covalent, which means Ag and iodine has a bond, okay, it would have a proper sigma bond in it, and you will see electrons which are present here, got it, with this getting delta positive and delta negative. You may have heard of that if you have ions like F minus, Cl minus, Br minus, and I minus, out of these four, which has more polarized, correct? So I minus will have polarizability. What do you mean by polarizability? Its tendency to push electrons towards the positive side. Is this clear? Right. So, which means I minus will have more tendency to push electrons towards this positive side. Okay. Now, what would happen here? When a light is falling on AgI, the electrons present between them, they will absorb the light and they will try to move towards silver, at a much easier level. So when they move and when they come back, correct, so they will start giving radiation, got it? So you can imagine that whenever the electrons in this bond electrons are absorbing the light, the reflected light which is coming, correct, the reflected light which is coming will be more of yellowish color, got it? Suppose if these electrons does not accept the light at all, what would happen? If they do not accept the light, whatever the light that forms, everything will get reflected. Are you getting it? Now out of these three, forget fluorine because it is completely ionic. Chlorine, bromine, and iodine. What about chlorine? Chlorine also doesn't have very high polarizability, which means it does not have tendency to push electrons. So even if the light falls on it, it does not push the electrons. That electrons will get sufficient energy that they will get dragged towards silver. So what would happen? White light will go and white light will reflect back. But when it comes to iodine, it is getting properly absorbed, only reflected light is coming. I mean, the scattered light is coming out of it. Are you getting it? That is why in all the cases, if you see, as you go down the group, the colors will always increase in the periodic table as you go down the group, because their polarizability will start increasing. In ions, the polarizability increases and tendency to give colored compounds will increase. Otherwise, everything gets simply reflected. So basically all the color formations we have studying so far, they have to do something with this bond formation. What type of bond formation? Fluorine always forms ionic bonds. Ionic bonds, will never push any electrons. Got it? They strongly hold the electrons with them. So it is impossible for us to get any colored compounds or colored solutions with them. Got it? Simple example, NaCl, always in white color. Why? Everything is getting reflected out of it.